I come from a family of women that'll fight. From my grandmother down to my daughter, sitting here in the chair. And all we've ever fought for is Aboriginal rights, and never for money. Money has never been our cause, because we'd only give it away to somebody else. It's very hard to be Aboriginal.
Mum, when you grew up at Cumra, was there a lot of violence around, and how did they handle the violence, if it ever happened?
There was a lot of violence around, but not around the mission. It was taken by the men down on the river, somewhere along the river where away from the mission, and the men would all go down and I guess they'd fight it out. We never heard anything from where we were, but they would all go away and you'd hear them talking and they'd come back and wouldn't hear a word.
So the women and the children never saw the men sort out their differences?
That's right. Never saw them fighting over anything, or heard them even. I remember one man coming home. He was single, but he was in his late 30s or 40s, and he had a white shirt on. And I saw his three sisters, who were married, looking up the road to Barmer, and I thought, this is unusual for these three to be looking for their brother. So I watched them, and they stood there in the square. One had half a tree, and they had big sticks with them. Now they stood there, and I didn't know what was going on, but I just waited, and when he got to where the sisters were, all married women, they all belted into him with their sticks. And he was a man that was well known for standing up for himself. He never turned on them, never said a word to them. He just took what they gave him. and he walked off, and one was belt him, another one would go and belt into him. There's three of them, and they told him to get home and get his good clothes off. Never heard or saw him anymore for weeks.
So you don't know why they did that, or?
Yeah, he shouldn't have come home drunk to the mission. So that's what it was about. The three, he's coming home to the sister's house under the influence, and her husband didn't drink, and neither did the other two's husbands. So that was what happened.
Now, when you moved back to Shep to become a foster mother, and you looked after all those kids, the 96 foster kids over those years,
yeah,
a lot of those kids experienced violence, and that's why they were with you?
Those poor kids came out of broken homes and very violent families. One girl told me that her mother was the mother of two younger children, and she was the different father. And she told me such a sad story that they were all drinking. She told me her mother drank poison. Christmas Day, and they were out Kyabram or Tatura or somewhere out that way, and she was telling me about this story, and she said my father and my uncle came home with bottles for my mother. And I said, what happened? She said they were throwing water on my mother to wake her up. They thought she was going to sleep, but she was dying. I've wondered in my mind what happened to that girl, because I've never seen her anymore. I always ask about her, but I don't know where she is. That's the saddest thing about working with those children, because their parents died and they go around through the same circle of living, on drugs, having children, stealing, going to the homes, and their children getting taken off them and going through the same circle of, what would you say, terrible things. Sometimes when I go to a funeral, I'll hear those kids calling my name because they've seen me at a funeral and they remember me, but when I try to get close to them, they want to go through what they've been through, and I don't know how to help them. They know I care about them and I'd like to look after them again, but I don't know how to do it anymore because there's drugs in it now and there weren't drugs in it before.
But you've had kids come back wanting to stay with you 20 years later.
Yeah, that's right.
They track you down.
Always come back and want to stay with me, or can I give them something to eat before they go away, because they haven't seen me for a long time. So I'd have to give them a loaf of bread, margarine, Vegemite, butter, milk.
But they would have felt safe at your home then to come back looking for you after all those years.
I always felt safe with them around too. Once I had a boy brought to me. Kevin brought him to me, and I had all the kids already in bed, and Kevin asked me if I'd put him to bed here for the night because he'd have to take him down to the police station tomorrow. And I said, all right, yeah. A couple of hours later, the police turned up. And I said, I don't know what his name is. I said, Kevin brought him to me. They went all around the house, stationed themselves right around the house, around the back. I went in and I locked the doors, the windows, and I told him, I said, the police are outside and what I want you to do is come out with me, because if you run away, they're all around the house. You don't know what they will do to you. He said, that's all right, Aunt. So I didn't know what he'd been through. It wasn't good for some of those poor kids because, like most of them, their parents had died while they were on their way into the homes. So, but I just loved looking after them, and I think I would be still looking after them if I didn't have a broken hip.
So those kids that you cared for, they didn't have the same opportunities as you coming from a good home.
Yeah.
So that's why you took up caring for those kids, to share with them what you had.
I had the chance to talk to them about our culture, our families. I knew most of the kids' parents, and I loved all those kids, and I'd be still looking after them today if I hadn't have hurt my hip.
When you raise so many kids besides your own and your grandkids, how do you think violence affects kids that have lived with violence, from the ones that you saw that come through the house?
The ones that came through the house, it was their parents that were the violent one. It was a young fella came with his wife and another boy, but I used to have to con the father up by giving him Wheaties and milk and bread and everything for the baby to have food for breakfast. If he took him home, he mightn't have anything for him. I loved that little baby, so I thought, I might as well feed him too. So he still comes to see me, the father, for being good to him and his baby.
So what would you say the difference was when you've seen so many kids like through Warrawa and stuff like that, the ones that didn't grow up in a violent situations and the ones that did?
The ones that didn't grow up in a violent situation went back to their families. They turned out all right. But the ones that did, sad. A lot of them went to boarding schools, and instead of coming back to me, because I'd been moving on because of my hip, they went off from the boarding school and went somewhere else, and that's how they got in the same circle that they always came out of. You know, it was mums are drunk, dads are drunk, my brothers are drunk, so they laugh at us when we get belted because we get belted by the ones who've got money. We end up the same way as everybody else, drunk and on drugs and whatever else.
So were the ones that grew up in those sort of situations, were they quieter, were they naughtier, couldn't learn, or what was the difference like that?
A couple of the girls used to climb out the window some unearthly hour at night and go away and would never come back. One used to go away and sleep under a tree in Maroopna because her boyfriend was over there and he was only 14. So what could you do to help these children? I tried to get that girl back. Her mother didn't care. Their father got killed in an accident, and the youngest of the three girls was in the car when the father died. That's what I think is wrong. They have the wrong people looking after them. We had a lot of sad stories like that, and it was very hard to fill the gap of the missing parent or the person who loved them. It was very hard. Hard as you tried. I'd give anything to be able to go and look after those kids again.
So if we were to wave a magic wand, and what do you think would be the things that would help the community now to stop violence?
Well, there's all the girls that play netball. They've got 3 or 4 teams. There's all the boys from 6 or 8 years old. And that's what we need for the young kids that aren't in anything. They can do that, but nobody wants to be in charge of them. Most of the people around here, they hand their kids on for somebody else to teach them football and culture and everything. You got a lot of people that live in Shepparton, have grandchildren all around the place, but there's no way that they'd get the kids involved in sport. And we've got a lot of sporting bodies here.
What about healing programs? Do you think they would work?
I was in what they call the River Contact program that was run by the council. I got really angry because the council was inviting every blasted community along the river, because we started it off to talk about how we lived down the river. When we first came over here to walk off of Cumragunja, we lived down the river in Imarupna. And when that committee got going, all of our people would turn up and they'd talk about how they lived. And in the last year, the council have been putting young non-Aboriginal on our committees to learn how to be black. So I got out because I reckon I'm black enough that I've got all my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, my nieces and nephews, and they could go onto that council and learn what the council is doing. There's no way in the world I'll stand by that. I'll stand up in Parliament and tell them that. 5 acres at Rumballara has been given to us through the Parliament in Canberra. And I suppose they can take it back when they want to. When you see them say, see all those new buildings that what Aboriginal people have been given, they got this and they got that and they got so much, all these houses. They don't tell you the rest. If they give you a building to use for your medical, for your health, for your eye service, any of those services, they own it. We don't own nothing. We own the building, but they own the rights to the building and all the papers that belong to it. We don't own nothing, because they take it back. They've been trying to get a building off me for, 10 years, huh?
No, longer than that.
If you want to take it down brick by brick, yes. But if anybody gave me a lot of money, I'd probably try and help the kids somewhere. Has anyone got any ideas of how I can help the kids? So, can anybody help me?